The Gwart Show is sponsored by Ellipsis Labs. Ellipsis Labs is building a world where mainstream finance happens on-chain. Their first product, Phoenix, is a fully on-chain limit order book DEX on Solana doing hundreds of millions of dollars in volume. I know this team personally. It's one of the strongest in the space. If you're interested in working with a team that's here to stay, Ellipsis Labs is hiring engineers passionate about DeFi to join their team. You can find Ellipsis Labs on Twitter at ellipsis_labs or head to ellipsislabs.xyz to learn more and apply. Hey guys, today I'm here with Evgeny from Wintermute. Probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to let him introduce himself anyways. And we're going to talk about all different things, market making and DeFi and crypto. So welcome, Evgeny. And go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Evgeny, CEO of Wintermute. Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, well, this will be awesome. I wanted to start, we don't have to go too much into this. A lot of people know who you are. But just give a brief background and maybe a bit of what you did prior to Wintermute, and then once you started Wintermute, moving into crypto.
Yeah, sure. Very briefly, basically prior to Wintermute, I was in TradFi for exactly 10 years, basically doing exactly the same as I do at Wintermute, but with more boring stuff. Basically, I was ETF market maker. For most of my time there. And 10 years is actually a lot for any trading job. So I was actually quite surprised I made it that far, but at some point I just got too boring, and I decided to change it all, move from Amsterdam to London and see what else I can be doing. It actually wasn't necessarily right away crypto or trading, but after exhausting all the options, which not so many actually, I thought, okay, I know how to do market making, and I just actually got into crypto as well, because I used to be, before that, blockchain, not crypto kind of guy, unfortunately. So I only started buying crypto in 2017, sadly, but before the bull run started, which was nice. Basically I knew how to do market making. Crypto was way more exciting than anything in TradFi, so I kind of combined the two and rolled with it.
When you say exciting, I want to dig in a bit. What about crypto, at least immediately, right? Right when you first got in, what was the obvious, wow, this is much, much more exciting than what I'm doing in TradFi? And how did market making maybe back then differ from TradFi market making?
I think the key difference initially for me, at least, was just volatility. So I still didn't really care about technologies that much. I didn't really care about most of the tokens, to be honest as well. Just volatility that was, I don't know, in TradFi you might have 3, 4, 5 interesting days a year where stuff happens, I don't know, Trump elections or Brexit or some other stuff. In crypto, on good years you have 5 days when nothing is happening, and every other day something is happening. So it's it is very, very different. And it just pulled me in right away pretty much. And there are obviously quite a few other things. So it's way less organized. So if you start your own operating firm in TradFi, it's very clear what to do if you do it before. You go and onboard with private broker, you build some tech, a lot of things are basically taken care of for you. And in crypto, you have to take care of so many things, I don't know, how you manage your wallets, how you manage funding, where you borrow things from, which are very unusual for people outside.
We're going to come back to this, but I do want to ask you quickly, when did you transition from caring mainly about the fact that you're very good at market making to caring about crypto, the tech? Was there something that was there a spark where you were I think this actually has a future, versus just I'm very good at quoting crypto coin prices?
It wasn't it wasn't right away. We haven't right away went, we're really good at quoting and we don't care about tech. We actually sucked at quoting and didn't care about the tech. So it was just, it was actually kind of a gradual process at becoming better at our job, and also understanding, okay, it's actually exciting stuff that is being built. A lot of it is obviously vaporware. And I think the first token I was actually excited about was Ripple back in 2017, but I stopped being excited about it when it flew to top 2 or top 3, or I don't remember what it was, when it went above $1. I was like, okay, that just doesn't make any sense, those fluctions, and I stopped being excited about Ripple. But yeah, it like for me, this TradFi background, it was solving some problems that I saw in TradFi. So that for me was interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I promise you we're not going to talk too much about Wintermute because mainly I want your personal opinions anyway. So, but I do want to ask, like, right now, the way that Wintermute's set up, like, what is the majority of your business line? Is it still market making? I mean, you guys have shifted into like virtually everything, right? Like, I would say, I mean, Wintermute is certainly up there with the most kind of, I don't know if you like this word, but like powerful firms in crypto. So you kind of, like one might consider Wintermute like the citadel or something of crypto. Like, what is the majority of like your business line now? Is it still just like traditional market making for crypto, or are you guys like, focused on other stuff just as much?
Yeah, so the fun thing, like, yeah, basically, I guess when people talk about market maker for crypto, people usually implies that we are basically market making for protocols. And the fun thing about Wintermute is it never was our main business line. Our main business line traditionally has been prop trading, like with more and more like sparkle of OTC trading. So like basically prop plus OTC is what I would say is our actually core activity. And that's basically across CeFi, DeFi, like all kinds of like TradFi venues now as well, and plus OTC basically. That's basically the core business. Market making for protocols, like that's something we started with back in 2018 as we were raising our first round. We were not successful with it in 2018, so we completely abandoned it because like first of all, nobody needed it, and secondly, nobody could pay for it. So it was, just not a very exciting space to be. And then we restarted doing that back in 2020 only, when it actually became interesting again, and when you started seeing all those like options kind of like structures, and then it became much more interesting.
Yeah. So just like in general, protocol intends to launch a token. How do they decide to use a market maker versus maybe a more, I don't know, DeFi centric launch mechanism like a pool 2, liquidity mining? Like what goes into a protocol founder's mind maybe in coming to a firm like Wintermute and saying like, we want you to market make for our token, and maybe like some loan option deal? Like what do you think goes into this?
I think that honestly the primary reason why people on board with market makers initially is because exchanges ask them to have a market maker. So basically protocols who don't care about centralized exchange listings, they ultimately, they don't care. So I don't know, to give an example, for example, DeFi never cared about this, like partially I think because they wanted to be fully decentralized, or also I guess they didn't want to attract that much scrutiny on the regulatory side. And so they never approached any exchange, to my knowledge, about the listing. They never approached any market maker, and they did just fine. And there are a bunch of protocols who also seem like, well, purists in that. And you typically see a lot of those protocols, they just don't choose a market maker also for this reason, because if you don't care about centralized exchange listings, like you don't really care about market maker, because then you can put your tokens in the pool, as long as you have some Ethereum or something else to put against it, you're fine. And that's usually sufficient. But the sad sign is it doesn't work that well for most of those protocols. Like DeFi did really well because they had a great product, but majority of protocols that don't target centralized exchange listings, they don't do that well. And then like a bunch of side reasons which I always found peculiar somewhat and that's kind of from basically like a lot of protocols like looking at graphs and stuff, and there are a lot of misconceptions, or I don't know, imaginary all the kind of stuff where like people assume that if you have a market maker, your price will go up. Sometimes people also assume that if you have a token, if you have a market maker, your price will go down, but it's like it works both ways. This like interesting, I don't know, conclusions of some market participants, but ultimately like a lot of protocols actually onboard market makers with ideas that, okay, I don't know, I'll work with whatever, Wintermute or GSR or somebody else or GWF, and I don't know, my token price will go up just because of that. And sometimes it works, but just because there are enough people who actually believe in the same thing.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to ask you to like throw anybody under the bus here, but I want to ask, what makes, and you don't have to use Wintermute necessarily as an example. I mean, obviously that would be the logical conclusion you would probably come to. But I want to ask, like, what differentiates a really good market maker for a protocol versus a market maker who, you see crypto Twitter screeching about, and there's a number of them, right? But like, what is the difference between somebody who market makes for a new protocol very well versus, like a not very good way to launch a token?
Yeah, I would say balance sheet in general is pretty important because you ultimately you give a pretty significant loan of your tokens to a market maker, and you want to kind of rely on them not to blow up, or you want to rely on them like, we had this issue with a token in the past where we just like made a screw up and it would be potentially gone. But yeah, like if a market maker has a balance sheet behind, they can just buy the tokens on the market and keep doing this thing. Like it's fine. But that's kind of like one consideration, that you want to pick a large and proven one, like with a track record of basically solving things, even if something went wrong, and with a track record of actually basically being on all the centralized exchanges. DeFi is a very interesting aspect of it as well. So if it's, especially like if it's EVM or Solana, there are like a very limited set of market makers can actually do something more advanced here, like not just seed in the pool, but actually provide liquidity on RFQ protocols, for example. So it's also how we try to differentiate ourselves. And there can be sometimes like it's not very often, like most protocols don't see it actually, because there are not necessarily synergies for everyone, but sometimes there are synergies with their portfolio companies, synergies with other protocols they're partnering with. So it's just a way to get into, like with Wintermute specifically, it's a way to get into this like Wintermute orbit, if you may.
Do you think that price discovery will ultimately happen on chain? Like just fundamentally long run, do we see token prices being like first and foremost on chain versus centralized exchanges?
My bet would be no. I think basically, and the reason is the main problem with on chain is it's too transparent, basically. And you see it with currently with, I don't know, all the MEV discussions. Basically, it's just too transparent, and it just creates this, basically like what you see, for example, with MEV currently on mainnet is, okay, you have people complain about, I don't know, free builders, people complain about private order flow, but it's all happens because, it's a way for, like, it's kind of like, nature always finds a way. It will have to go like offline. It will have to go like off chain to basically achieve a better state. Central order book, in my opinion, is still kind of like the best price discovery mechanism possible. And however fast Solana would ever be, it will never be able to run, I don't know, US, like even US stock exchanges, for example. I'm not even talking about CME. It's just, I don't think, I think basically physics will kick in much faster than that. So again, like I don't think it's just feasible to run everything on chain. First, because of physics. Second, because it's just too transparent to enable proper price discovery.
How do you feel about this, just like ideologically? Because I mean, I guess I would probably come to a similar conclusion as you, right? Like there's always going to be a time difference between blockchains and centralized exchanges. And, Solana has this idea that if they have a lot of data centers around the world and price discovery is happening like co-located near individual data centers, that could actually beat a Binance price or something. We'll see how this like plays out eventually. But I am curious, like, is this a failure then of us to build like this new, massive global financial system if price discovery is always going to occur on, Tokyo Binance boxes?
Well, it comes down to like there will always be like cyberspace and midspace, and I see like a lot of those things are just much more effective to do off chain or in real world. Like I don't know, like maybe we'll transact with stable coins and I don't know 5-10 years time. That's fine, and that's totally feasible. I think it's very much doable already with current technology. But yeah, are we going to move everything on chain? Definitely not, because it just, in a lot of cases, just doesn't make any sense, practical sense primarily. So I think we'll end up with this hybrid of some things on chain, some things off chain, and that's fine. I actually don't see anything ideologically wrong with it. That's fine.
With regards to like token launches today, right? Maybe there's some VC rounds or like, you know, maybe some like point systems or something, but like how would you compare the, I don't know, maybe equality of this to ICOs? It sounds like you were like, you kind of got into crypto around ICOs too, so you probably have some context there. Like, just, I think a lot as of late, right? You've seen a lot of discussion like with these high FTV, low flow, like blah blah blah, and people are saying like ICOs were a much better format. Do you agree with this?
Yeah. So to start with, yeah, I came into crypto when ICOs just started. I very finally haven't done a single ICO in 2017. Well, whatever actually. But yeah, I just never participated in this kind of stuff. Primarily because I was just like, yeah, not used to this craziness just yet. So it was my first cycle, and I was like, okay. So I missed those 100 ICOs, but yeah, surely 101st will just fail, and it just kept not happening. But that's fine. I learned my lesson. But ultimately, yeah, it was a way more democratic process, but it was also a process that worked in a time when we didn't have that much capital available, and we didn't have that many, I don't know, sophisticated actors in the space, and we didn't have that many VCs. We didn't have like a lot of actors that are currently there. Like, I think if you would enable ICOs today in the same format as we had in 2017, I don't think it would result in anything very significant. I think you would like have, I don't know, all the sophisticated VCs and sophisticated like prop firms like us and others basically just swoop in most of the supply right away, which would result roughly in the same kind of outcome. Kind of depends on how the mechanism would work, but it still would not necessarily be like fair in a way like that most people think it's fair. But it's also an issue, right? Because people think something is fair if they get to buy at really low prices, then goes up 100x. That's the definition of fair. But ultimately, like, it's a market forces, it's a market, well, economy. Yeah, obviously, yeah, if you have way less purchasing power than, I don't know, Warren Buffett, you will always lose to Warren Buffett or Paradigm or Andreessen or Wintermute even sometimes.
Thanks for listening to The Gort Show on the Blockspace Podcast Network. Subscribe to our newsletter at blockspace.media to get the show directly to your inbox. Show links, transcripts, and Bitcoin articles twice per week. Stay ahead of the conversation by visiting blockspace.media.
So we have like the distribution of tokens, and then we have the actual token designs, right? And like a lot of the ICO era tokens haven't exactly, I mean, they haven't really done that well. So I'm curious, like, what your opinion, like, in terms of token design. I know that I guess you're in ventures now, but you know, a lot of what you do is more just like the trading aspect. But like, what do you think good token design looks like? And are we even there yet? Like, do we have good examples of tokens like that look sustainable over, you know, the long run?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do have at least two, I would say. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are pretty well designed from that perspective. Like, it's a very decentralized. It's a very, yeah, it's still possible to actually get your hands on some and do things with them. But yeah, there's new tokens. It's kind of like, well, I think the most funny thing is that we keep reinventing the things that TradFi system invented, and we keep ignoring a lot of like building blocks that are in TradFi because they have to do with trust or giving permission or giving something else. Like, very obvious thing that we have in TradFi, for example, is SEC. And SEC is basically literally says, okay, this stock can be listed and this stock cannot be listed because it didn't provide disclosures or whatever, or just a scam. So they can make decisions like this. Like, obviously they make some bad decisions. Like, I don't know, if they think Coinbase is so bad, why did they make the listing go through, for example? Like, they always know and use it. There was an issue with whatever, how they do things. So yeah, I'm definitely not SEC apologist, but it definitely protects to a degree people against basically ICOs by nefarious actors where, I don't know, people just launch something and then they just, rob everyone. So we don't have this in crypto. I'm pretty skeptical that it would be easy to replicate something like this. But maybe we can. Maybe we can find some kind of, I don't know, rating agencies, stuff like that, that could do certain things in a decentralized way. I think I've been talking too much and I actually forgot what I was discussing.
No, it's good. It's good. But so then, like, what type of practical investor protections should tokens grant, right? Like, what's maybe a better way to say this? Like, what rights should tokens grant? And like, does this start to just resemble securities? I've heard you talk about, the reason I'm asking this is I've heard you talk about governance before, right? And like, I think you have a pretty sort of pragmatic view of it, which is that we've had corporate governance for a long time in traditional finance. It works. Whether or not it works well, I mean, maybe there's a discussion to be had there, but like, we do have some heuristics as to how to govern something, right? But then we start to get into this, like, okay, this looks a lot like an equity. What do you think is the long run of tokens? They look a lot like equities, and what type of rights should tokens convey to holders?
So I'm not going to answer this particular question. I'm not going to answer like how I want things to be. So I don't necessarily think it's about the rights and what the tokens resemble. I think it's about set of standards. And actually, I generally hate this social consensus thing in crypto, but in this particular case, I think there are certain norms that we should kind of like collectively enforce for the greater good. And those norms primarily have to do with disclosures. And that's basically, okay, some of it is already happening. Like, okay, what is the distribution to, I don't know, investors and employees and everything. But I think it should go way beyond that. I think it should go into, okay, which prices, like what are the, maybe not this as well as for investors, but like at which price every single round was done. So basically how much selling pressure there is basically. If you engage with a market maker and they have an option, for example, with a strike price, disclose it. Like then people know, okay, what is this level where the market maker might start selling because the token goes above the strike price. Actually, I fundamentally not against it. Like we fundamentally cannot disclose it because ultimately it's up to the protocol. But if protocol would say like, yeah, we want to go public with it, it would be like, okay, yeah, it kind of like sucks for us because everyone would know what we do. But I actually think it does make sense for protocols to disclose it because, and to my mind, only one protocol ever did it, and it was WorldCoin, and they got so much shit for it. Even though like every other major launch since then had a bunch of market makers, and they never disclosed what the strike prices were. But yeah, WorldCoin for some reason got a lot of shit for it, which I always found surprising. And also any selling by insiders, primarily employees. I think that should be just disclosed. I think the very few protocols at the moment are doing it, like if any. Like I know a few protocols are basically doing it sort of the US way, where they basically tell their employees, okay, you need to announce you are selling to us, and then basically just do it over the next 30 days. So you cannot time it. You just basically need to announce you're selling. But I think even better way would be to literally all the employees or any insiders say, okay, I'm just going to TVAP sell next 30 days, no matter what happens. And then basically disclose to the whole market. And then I think this is the right way. And I think that it would be kind of very good place if we can arrive to this.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of times we find out about founder secondary sales from Twitter. Like it's not like we're seeing like gossip on Twitter about this. This is never like, some publicly disclosed memo or something. So like a little bit moving off that, how do you feel about protocols that issue both equity and tokens? Like, do you have a fundamental problem with this, or like, how do you think this should look in the long run?
It ultimately all happened. I mean, most of the bad things in crypto happen because of US in general. And this is just like fundamentally the one that's happening because basically protocols go through all kinds of hoops to basically avoid regulatory scrutiny and basically avoid so they create these dual structures where the basically companies that provide service to the foundation and then they're sort of separate and everyone tries to basically, make this illusion that they're separate. And I guess it works because, it seems defensible on a legal side, but it creates this like very stupid structure where basically everyone has to invest into both because ultimately you just don't know where the value accrual will be. Because maybe they will just accumulate the costs into the operational company, or maybe the token holders will get it, like nobody knows because of US. I think once it's resolved, I think it will become a lot more cleaner. Although like there can be like a structure where you can have this operational company issuing the token, launching a protocol, later this protocol basically sail on its own, and then maybe creating another protocol on top of it and basically creating another token and another token and another token. So basically this operational company becoming like a proper service company that actually does a lot more things, not just for this token, but actually for a lot more things, and maybe even making money from consulting. I don't know, like basically it is entirely possible that they split apart and both actually become profitable. I haven't seen that many examples of that just yet, but maybe we'll see it from Uniswap, for example.
Yeah, this is a good segue. DAO governance. Do you participate much? Maybe not you personally, but does Wintermute participate much in DAO governance? And like, what is your overarching view of DAOs and how DAOs are structured?
So I used to participate myself back in 2021. So yeah, it was just fun primarily because it's, I don't know, it's forums. It's like back to 90s almost. So it's, it is generally fun. I don't do it that much nowadays just because we have a team that does it. And we are pretty big in governance in general. Like we have actually, I think we have one of the biggest delegates on Arbitrum, for example. So we're actually going pretty deep in that. We help protocols, we submit proposals, we basically trying to be as helpful as we are. And for us, it's kind of like dual saying. On one hand, we basically help protocols that we are working with in one way or another, like maybe they're a portfolio company, maybe we are doing market making for them. So it's, or maybe we just like them because they're really interested. So there is PR element to it as well. And on the other hand, it's also does help us with like generating some alpha every now and then when there are interesting proposals on the forums and we get to farm them before everyone else learns about it, for example. Well, I mean, it's still like, it's not like we have inside information, but basically not so many people read forums that nowadays still, which is interesting.
Do you think that there have been improvements in DAO governance? Like, do you think that there has been, I've heard you talk about this before, that's why I asked, like, I think that their DAOs started out maybe initially with this idea of a lot of people governing, and maybe those people aren't really equipped with the skill set to govern a protocol, right? And maybe there's been like some people have started to kind of realize this maybe and put people who should be in charge. But it still seems like a lot of this is like very bureaucratic, and you hear this like governance circus. Like, what do you think that there's been improvements here, or is this like still kind of a charade?
I mean, a lot of protocols definitely a charade. Like people pretending there is a governance, but actually it's just a bunch of, I don't know, whales or VCs or founders deciding things. Ultimately, it's just yet another thing of, okay, we just copy pasting stuff from TradFi without realizing it. So, okay, you can, like, you have a bunch of companies with fake boards, for example, that improve stuff, but actually just a founder deciding stuff. Like, I don't know, Meta, for example. Yeah, Zuckerberg has control and stake over all the voting, yet people every year go and vote on whatever, Meta governance proposals to no avail because Mark decides everything, so it doesn't really matter. And I think I would personally bet that in crypto will arrive at the similar kind of structures where it's either very clear that just it's the founder deciding everything, or we'll arrive at like proper structures where you don't vote for a guy, you basically vote for, you literally vote for a guy to be CEO, for example, of that protocol, or maybe you vote for a guy with a team that will drive it somewhere. And I think like a lot of protocols are actually going this way. And I think it ultimately makes sense, but it would be literally replicating the TradFi structures. And I know like Vitalik is advocating for this like quadratic voting, like stuff like that. But I actually, first of all, I don't think it's necessarily going to result in anything workable, like functional.
Well,
And
I mean, the
second,
thing, like, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but the thing about quadratic voting is like, and I troll about this a good bit because I don't know why anybody, like, I don't know why in any capitalist system somebody would opt in to quadratic voting. Like, it's almost it's
exactly, yeah,
antithetical, right? It's like it's very antithetical to like this notion that if you have more stake, you should get more power to make the rules, and it's like you're actively giving that up for some notion of like wisdom of the greater good or something like this. But it doesn't actually fit into like any like any model of like economics or finance, right? Like, but yeah, it is interesting for sure, but I tend to agree with you on that.
yeah. So I think we'll just arrive at, yeah, basically same kind of like shareholders voting for CEO structures that we see in TradFi.
Okay, so then like what are the big unlocks in DeFi? Like you and I are both kind of agreeing here, like we're copy pasting a lot of the same ideas we have from TradFi into crypto. So then like where do you see the big unlocks with, I don't know, blockchains, crypto, like however you want to take it?
I think the big unlocks are where we actually solve something that TradFi doesn't know how to do or does badly. And to me, it always like, yeah, to me, the biggest selling point was always, okay, how do we basically decentralize all those intermediaries? And to a big degree, like a lot of things like if you look at lending protocols, I think they're doing pretty well in that regard. Like you literally build private broker on top of ours, for example, at the moment. Just it would be quite an undertaking, but you can actually start building something towards it, and it's doable. So I think like on the financial side, once we start seeing like from user to the final whatever to the final actor using, I don't know, a DEX, for example, that just works. And I'm talking primarily about perpetual DEXs because I think with all my, I don't necessarily think that Uniswap is the greatest invention of mankind ever, but it works. So like I think Uniswap V2 is still like the most elegant thing that was created by Uniswap actually to this day. Everything else is just building on top and making it much more like central of the book. But basically on trading side, if somebody can figure out like how to do a proper DEX, which will not be reliant on anything centralized, especially oracles, that would be great. Or maybe it will obviously rely on oracles, but it should rely on oracles in a way that, okay, if Binance goes down, it can still function basically. Which we don't like, which we see somewhat with some experimentation with pre-market tokens, for example, on the hyperliquid or Aave. I'm still kind of, it probably have to do with me being a gamer, but I'm still like looking forward to GameFi at some point working out. But I think we're still like 2-3 years out from that because it just literally is that much time that takes to build a good game. Although like one thing that's quite interesting is like if you look at pump.fun, that's like literally a game. And I said I don't think people necessarily realized it yet, but it's actually one of the first successful GameFi experiences there. And I think it would be quite interesting to see like how that develops. And also if somebody builds it even more gamifiable, basically, is like this kind of structure. And finally, like social would be really interesting. So like we see again like a bunch of experiments. Like I have to say I haven't tested that many of them, but because I'm just a boomer and Twitter is enough for me to bother with too many other things. But yeah, I will be quite curious to test things. Like I don't know, I tested Femtech and it's just, I think it's fun, somewhat speculation wise, but the UI is just so horrid that I just wouldn't stay there for long because it just didn't change over the last 6 months or something, which I also found like very peculiar. Like if it would look nice, I would actually give it like a lot more of my time, but it just looks horrid and just like horrible experience, and I just cannot get myself to use it.
Yeah, I think social networks, and a lot of people will say this obviously, are just like a totally different beast. Like it is incredibly difficult to like cold start a social network. And I mean, yeah, we're seeing some experimentation. I guess it will depend on like part of the problem, obviously, is like crypto people, we have no idea what real people do or want, right? Like they spend their time on TikTok, they're on like Instagram and stuff. And like our understanding of whether or not they will engage like with this hyper financialization the way that we do is very like low right now. And I mean, I certainly think it's feasible that they will, but I think cracking that is, yeah, it's like very clearly like it's a huge undertaking. I wanted to go back though for 1 second. You were talking about DEX design, like you're saying something like Hyperliquid, right? Like which Hyperliquid seems to be kind of crushing it, right? Like I mean, for on-chain trading, it seems like they go really fast. But the thing about this is like you were talking about, no intermediaries and stuff, and you said that Uniswap V2 was like the most elegant thing we've created, and everything else has been sort of moving more toward an order book. And I've like definitely agree, right? Like with these RFQ systems, right? Now you're getting quotes, from real market makers. And I guess my question is like, does this ever converge on a system that's decentralized in the sense that we aren't reliant on, like builders or searchers to ultimately include transactions, right? Like, and that's the thing is like, if you want good execution, you're usually relying on these like systems that have the most liquidity, like these actors that have the most liquidity. And it doesn't seem like like Uniswap V2 is like very different from Uniswap X, right? Like it's just we're moving like you said, closer and closer back to like how we know markets work. And so I'm just wondering, like, what do you think? Will it always just be a relatively small number of actors, which is how it kind of works in TradFi, right? Like that, provide the best execution, and that's what users want.
I think they will, like, my bet is they'll just arrive at the same kind of a TradFi model. There's basically a bunch of blockchain firms competing with each other, and that's fine. Like, I don't know, they have a bunch of blockchains competing with each other. They have a bunch of, lending protocols competing with each other. They have a bunch of DEXs competing with each other. Why cannot there be a bunch of blockchain firms competing with each other? Like, what's so centralizing about this? I don't know. Like,
well, maybe I think maybe there's this notion that there's like high economies of scale, right? And like so the three biggest builders or two biggest builders or eventually one biggest builder ultimately has all the liquidity. They have the lowest latency, and they have the best like deals with centralized exchanges. And then I guess the theory, right? Like I'm not necessarily taking a side because I probably agree with you about the long run of this, but like the theory is that, well, now they can censor or they can like sort of veer away from this vision that we have because users want best execution most times. They don't want to get sandwiched. They don't want to get like front run or whatever. And so whoever can provide that, there's sort of an equilibrium whereby one single entity is providing best execution, but maybe has outsized power in these type of systems.
Yeah, I mean that's ultimately is a nature of capitalist systems, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like if I want to create a competitor to Uniswap, and they actually we incubated a competitor to Uniswap X before it was Uniswap X. Like it would be it's an uphill battle. If you want to create a competitor to Opera, it's an uphill battle. Like it's always hard to challenge the top firms, and it's a lot of times it's because of capital constraints. Well, in terms of prop trade firms, but there's like a lot of incumbents in other sectors. It's just because of, they have users and you don't. So you need to figure out a way how it's just the nature of competition. And I think I wouldn't try to optimize against having like 3 builders and 5 prop trading firms. I would optimize against having one dominant firm. That I would try to optimize against, because I don't think that's optimal for anyone, because I think that definitely sucks. So I would optimize against Wintermute being the only builder in town. Like that, I think would be very valid concern and very valid like wrong like building wrong architecture of the protocol.
Let's say 10 years from now, or I don't know, maybe even hopefully a shorter period of time, we have like more regulatory clarity, if you will, and there's more of these like maybe TradFi prop trading firms coming into the space. I think we're already seeing this to some extent now, but like let's just say there's a flood of these. Like, Citadel and like Rentec and Sig, right? Like, I want to ask, like, how do you view Wintermute's competitive edge once, or you don't have to say Wintermute, maybe specifically. I said I wasn't going to pry too much on that. I want to hear your personal views, but like currently the prop trading firms in crypto that are very good at what they do, how do they compete? Do they have a big edge or a relatively small edge once Citadel gets here?
I think I think people tend to overestimate like just how much edge Citadel and others do have. And they do definitely have like very good signals and like back and I don't know, latency advantages. But a lot of like latency, for example, it's not that difficult to catch up. It is like in TradFi is just a very big capital expenditure to, I don't know, buy microwave towers and radio and like what's not. But it's possible, like everyone can do it. And a lot of those things are just, working fine. So it's a matter of like 1 or 2 years and you can catch up with anyone you want if you have enough capital and smart people as well. Signals, like it's kind of like the same. And the same about signals is, well, anecdotally, when Citadel was in crypto, like a couple of years ago, like they just made a killing because they just utilized, well, it's just like what I had, I don't know, like if it's actually the case, but they just utilized a bunch of signals they haven't used for years and it'll just work because it was just so dumb what was happening. But crypto market changes, it matures. So ultimately, you have to adapt those algos, you have to adapt those signals, and the crypto natives like Wintermute and Qubit and everyone else, it's not like we just do it the same. We actually improve the technology, improve the latency, improve the signals. It's all also ongoing, and it's actually quite possible to catch up for most people to like big firms. So I think, well, my bet is by the time they're actually here again, like if it's once we hit another probable market, like you will see a lot more crypto native firms being actually ready and competing decently. And finally, it also has to do, like that's separate to the technology discussion. It's also like how the prop trading firms work is also very different. Like a lot of prop trading firms are focusing on niches, for example, on particular niche. Like in TradFi, like if you think about Citadel, it's not like Citadel is making money and nobody else does. Like lots and lots and lots of prop trading firms are actually making money because either they found a particular niche they're good at and Citadel doesn't bother about it, or maybe Citadel actually sucks in that particular niche.
Yeah.
Or sometimes because they're generalists. And we kind of choose the latter approach. So we choose to be generalist, basically meaning that we're in DeFi, we're in CeFi, we're in TradFi, we're in OTC, we are basically present everywhere we can be. With the idea that we can basically realize quite nice synergies between all those like different parts that most of other actors cannot realize. And that's basically our bet in the long run.
Okay, and switching gears once again a little bit. How do you feel about the Ethereum roadmap? Like I've seen you comment some, so I'm curious what your personal views are.
I actually don't know much about the Ethereum roadmap. It's
okay, that's all right.
No, I mean it is quite complex. Like I'm mostly commenting like in jest when I see some comments by Ethereum aligned people about like how things are going and why things are not happening like they wanted to happen. And to me, the most curious thing, I think you covered it with covered it with like Benedict and Dauger a couple of weeks ago. Like a lot of people in Ethereum are continuously flabbergasted that things turn out the way they turned out, and like they basically build a bunch of incentives, and then they are very surprised that those incentives turn out the way they turn out to be. And to me, that's the most like peculiar thing about it, because just design something else and we'll work around it and we'll see how we can make money else otherwise. But don't complain about us making money. Like you literally design a system and it works as intended.
Yeah, you tweeted something recently which I thought was spot on. I'm gonna paraphrase this, but you said blockchain tech is super conductive to create purely capitalist systems. But your argument was we either need to sort of ascribe to this belief, or we aren't going to have these, purely capitalist driven systems, we're going to have a bunch of sort of workarounds with obscure, mechanism designed to try to create the incentives we want. What were you getting at here? I saw it was like you're quote tweeting Hayden, but like I this got a lot of I don't know, maybe pushback on Twitter.
I don't know. I haven't felt like this. I think it was fun. Yeah, but I mean, ultimately it was before. I think that the context was it was around like this mother token by Iggy, and
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think Vitalik got triggered by it, and I got triggered a bit by Vitalik saying that she should like donate proceeds to somebody, and then Hayden commented on that as well, that people should like donate things, and like there are a bunch of things that triggered me, those replies, and one was this capitalist aspect of it, because I do think that blockchain is super conductive to capitalism, and I think we should use it a lot more and not less, and not try to fix it, like whether it's NAV or light or whatever, like embrace it and build around it. Basically, from that perspective, I like Solana approach much more, because they're not trying to fix capitalism, they actually just roll with it, even if it results in something like crazy every now and then. And second thing that triggered me was, I'm generally like, I'm very triggered when people tell you that, okay, if you make a lot of money, you should donate it to somebody. Like, that's again, like, it's not very capitalist of them, and especially like coming from, I don't know, Uniswap guys, like, okay, they're on top of the world now in the Ethereum ecosystem, and okay, I'm sure they donate a lot of money, but like, let other people make money as well, I guess, is my answer. And also like, don't count other people's money, like let them do with it what they want. It's fine.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of reluctance to let the market build solutions, and there's a lot of desire to try to push the market the direction that may be like ideologically aligned or whatever, but it rarely works out like this, right? And somebody finds a workaround to that too. So you're sort of in this constant state of trying to curb the powers that be, and like maybe what some people perceive to be centralizing forces. And the reality is, like, in these, I would say, especially in like complex financial systems, it's inevitable, right? There's going to be this, like, some vectors of centralization. It's interesting to hear you say that you like Solana's approach. Like, what do you think about like the trajectory of Solana? Like, do you think Solana can compete with, I don't know, I mean, you hear Anatoly talk about NASDAQ, right? We're putting NASDAQ on chain. Like, we kind of discussed earlier that maybe this isn't going to be feasible with, like centralized exchanges. But like, do you think, it's interesting. Do you think Solana has a good shot at sort of building out this system?
Well, first of all, like, I would say on the tech side of things, just like the way it works, and like us being on venture sides, for example, like we invest into, a lot of protocols on EVM, like EVM based protocols. We invest in a lot of protocols on Solana. Like, it's a lot harder to build things on Solana. Like, I just know it from a bunch of people we invested into. Like, this meme about chewing glass, it didn't come from nothing. So like, I think there was somebody made this comparison. It's like, maybe it's stupid, I don't know, but I kind of like it that EVM is like JavaScript basically, and you do see it, and you do see it, like, it's just like easier to code, but it's also kind of like not necessarily the smartest design right away, just because it was built like years ago with no desire to build something like super, I don't know, or how do you call it? Well, because it's something that support like a lot of transactions or whatever. But Solana just took this right away, and they're basically building towards that. Like, whether it will succeed or not, whether it will be able to host NASDAQ and CME or what's not, we'll see. But they're just laser focused on tech, and that's what I really like. They're just like laser focused on tech. They know exactly what they want to achieve, and they just build it towards it. They're not telling you like, okay, you need to be like aligned with Solana goals and I don't know, build what you want to build. They're just, okay, we build this stuff, we put this like decentralized data centers everywhere, we make it as fast as possible, and like whatever this like crazy stuff they recently did with whatever ZK proofs or something. I don't know, I haven't been like, I'm not smart enough to understand this. But I know it is cool. It's just tech. it's cool. So that I like it's just technology, pure technology.
Yeah. All right. Other side of this, does Bitcoin excite you at all?
Ooh, it's a hard one. I heard so many people like cheating on Bitcoin because I don't know, it's just not sustainable long run because of security, because of a lot of things. I think like one very obvious thing that Bitcoin has is the brand. This was the first, and it's also fairly decentralized at this stage. So as long as they can figure out, and again, like I'm definitely not an expert here, also I try to understand it a bit. Like as long as they solve this, like all this like attack vectors issue on security, I think it should be fine and it will live long and prosper. Yeah.
What do you think DeFi solves? Like, what is something in your mind that DeFi like really solves right now? You're talking about lending, maybe like dexes, but like, and maybe you can tie this in a little bit to like what you guys invest in if you want or not. But like, you look at DeFi, like, what are you like? Oh, this is like an obvious solution.
Yeah, I think like lend is a pretty good one. Well, I mean, we discussed DAOs. I actually think it's a pretty neat solution for DAOs, well, for voting and for basically achieving this decentralized consensus with like nobody counting the laws, but everything happening very transparently. Like in general, like very one simple thing that DeFi achieves is transparency. Like that to me is a one single winning thing. It can be a losing set as well, because a lot of times you don't want transparency. But I think it should really embrace cases where transparency is what sets it apart from TradFi systems. It can be a lot of things.
Okay, so and then the other side of that is what are things that DeFi does not solve that maybe people think it does, but in your opinion, it's just like DeFi is not a solution to this.
At the moment, I would say like trading major coins, DeFi doesn't really solve at the moment. Like it's just way better done off chain. And I think we might end up in a structure where initial launches, initial like token offerings or whatever are done on DeFi, and then it just migrates to bigger venues outside, because you need a lot more throughput and a lot less transparency as well for it to function properly. But maybe, so it's like later stage trading, I don't think it will happen on DeFi, most likely. Like I want to believe it's possible. Like I want to believe like the IDX before will work out, or some other protocols will work out. But yeah, I don't know.
What is your thesis around GameFi? Is it that like the ownership of assets in the game, or what? You said you're a big gamer, so like you probably have some like personal opinions here. And then like so then what about GameFi then?
I think it's general ownership of assets. Like it can be NFTs, but it can also like literally whatever game resources. Like you can build really fun systems which are not like controlled and which just work independently of centralized vectors, which I think would be super cool. I don't know. Like I'm very looking forward to one of those games succeeding fine, and Wintermute can like whatever prop trade those resources, for example, on Binance. Like it would be fun. Like we're definitely not there yet. Like I know we've seen some experience by Axie or whatever, but it was still like pretty tiny in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I would quite looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think also that Axie ended up being like sort of click farmy, and that's been the plight of many of these GameFi experiments thus far. But with that said, like there has been like almost an obscene amount of money poured into GameFi, and I'm kind of like curious, like why has none of this worked out yet? I mean, maybe we're still early, but you see some of the amounts that have gone into some of these games, and I'm like, yo, like we should have a game that people love to play, and it's just not there yet. So I don't know. Maybe like I'm not really a gamer myself. I play poker, but this is like quite different. But yeah, I was like, I don't know. What do you think? I guess I don't know if you have any other thoughts. Like, what do you think has not? Is there the games aren't captivating enough yet, or what?
I think it's two reasons. Like first, and I think we're moving away from that now because people realize it's just like not the way. But first, they initially started building games around the basically incentives and just give tokens away and basically just build it so that people would click and not build something that people want to play actually. So for me, it was like the most horrible thing. Like actually, there were a few games that were genuinely like interesting. Like I remember Dark Forest, for example. Like that was really cool actually. Like I haven't got too much into it because at some point it just required like a lot of scripting knowledge. And I just couldn't bother with that. But it was actually like fun. Like it was like very low level graphics, of course, like very low level everything, but it was kind of fun. And I think like those kind of experiments could definitely work. But like if you look at AAA games, like it just the second aspect of it is it literally takes years to build. Like look at I don't know how long it took Cyberpunk to be built, for example. Like it just really takes a lot of time to build and test and work out all like release it in alpha, release it in beta, like because I played quite a few games from like alpha to beta to release, and just okay, like the best of them would be in beta. They would still be like better than any blockchain game in existence because they already put like years into it to release it in the first place.
Okay, I'm not to put you on the spot, but I have one last question. What do you think is your most contrarian view about crypto? Maybe you've already touched on it, but do you have any like very contrarian view that maybe most of the crypto community would not agree with?
I think the most contrarian would be that crypto won't be around in like 100 years time.
Really? Why not?
So I think like where we're heading now with AI and with like energy developments and everything, like it's feasible to assume that, well, I don't know, look at some of the, like look at some of the more like famous franchises and in sci-fi, for example. Like you look at Star Trek, for example. Star Trek is a post-scarcity society. Like they don't use money, actually. If you don't use money, why do you need tokens? But it's like, okay, you might get some coordination out of it, or maybe I like own whatever that many Bitcoins from like 100 years ago, but that's like, it basically doesn't stop solving stuff. Because currently what we are trying to solve is like central bank monopoly and also try to replace equities with tokens, maybe, I don't know, stuff like that. But maybe none of these things will exist in 100 years time because we reached, I don't know, maybe AI's propelled us to stars and we just don't need anything anymore. And that's it. And I think like humanity will either evolve towards that or it will die away because of something. But I think it's kind of like very obvious we are heading there.
Really? Do you think that's actually quite interesting? Like the AI argument is, and I would 100% agree. Like most of these systems at their core are designed to like allocate resources efficiently amongst humans. And like some humans have more resources and want to trade and others, like, so I think that, you're spot on. Like in a post-scarcity world, we don't need resource allocation like this, but do you think we're close to this?
No, I mean, I don't think we're necessary. I mean, I actually don't know. Like, you read some people on Twitter and they're like, okay, we're just going to die because AI will reach singularity in a couple of years or whatever, which I'm kind of like sympathetic to, like not sympathetic to us all dying, but like sympathetic to like going slower with this and not like too fast. I'm actually like, I'm definitely decent, well, whatever it's called, like
decelerationist.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think like, you can definitely get it very wrong. And it can be very bad. So, and it's like, I used to be kind of like, I used to think, okay, like no matter what we do, it's all kind of preordained and we might as well just go for a ride. But once you realize that you can actually control it by controlling the data centers and controlling the chips, we as humanity can actually slow it down if you really want to. It's just like, the problem is, it's a pretty tough coordination game between like multiple corporations and governments and whatnot. So we'll see. But if you get the proper AI, it should be pretty easy to get post-scarcity world in general.
The abundance mindset, as they call it. Well, this has been fantastic. I feel like we touched on a bunch of different topics, which is great. And I got your opinion on them, not just, party lines. This is the last thing I want when I bring people on. I want people to actually tell me what they believe. So I thought this was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me.